Hey everybody, so I'm making this video quickly for one of our members, Hoka, who posted both in the Facebook group and also on the website itself a question about leash walking. And on the website, the video was posted under a video of mine called How to Stop Leash Pulling with Any Dog. It's available on considerthedog.com. And essentially it breaks down the specifics, the details of how to really properly execute a 180 about turn to help prevent dogs from forging forward and pulling. 180 about turns are nothing new in dog training, but I have found that there are some really important details that can make a big difference as to how successful the technique will actually be. Anyway, to Hoka's question, it sounds like the dog's been lagging behind. So Hoka asks, hey, I've been doing this, my dog's lagging behind, what should I do? So there are a few considerations here. This particular technique, when we make a quick about turn and kind of go the other way, the dog inevitably receives a correction. And for some dogs, it's a pretty reasonable correction, like pretty strong for them. And if you have a dog that wants to do the right thing, it can be very normal, especially after the first few repetitions, to see your dog start to lag because they don't want to make the mistake. And they're trying to figure out what are the parameters here? How do I succeed? And so if I do one of these about turns and, my dog gets the correction, and then as I start moving forward, my dog seems a little bit cautious. I want to be careful about, pulling really hard, kind of dragging my dog around, pulling them in really close, because again, they're trying to figure out the rules and they're trying to do the right thing. So in that context, what I would want to do is slow down. So a lot of times, like, after I make an about turn, if the dog receives a correction and I can tell now that the dog is like thinking and trying, the next turn I'll do it a little bit slower. Like I'll really try to stack the deck in the dog's favor so that they can see that if they're attentive and they stay where they can see me peripherally, that's the pathway towards success. It's really important. And I do address this a little bit in the video itself, but it's very important that our dogs get some repetitions where we make that turn and there's no correction. We deliberately will at times make that about turn when we know the dog is doing perfectly, because we want the dog to see that when they're in good position, there's not going to be any correction because they can just turn and follow us. Because that's the idea behind that technique. We're not really correcting the dog. We're just turning, and the dog has to learn that it's in their own best interest to be able to keep their eyes on us a little bit. So that's kind of one scenario where we really want to sort of give the dog the benefit of the doubt and approach the lagging behind or the walking slowly with a bit of compassion, slow down our turn, slow down the pace of our walk. And the other thing we could be doing is, of course, a little bit of verbal encouragement or even food encouragement to bring the dog back up to your side. Be careful about using food if you have a dog that gets overexcited with food, because overexcitement often leads to leash pulling, and we don't want to then put the dog in a position where they're likely to make a mistake again, right? We don't want to set our dogs up to lose the game. And if anything, we want to do the opposite. We want to provide the rules of the game and then really try to set the dog up to learn how to win the game as quickly and reliably as possible. In this case, winning the game would be turning with us, and that way the leash stays loose and they don't ever feel the end of it. Now, other dogs will be lagging behind, they're just being nincompoops, right? Like they're just dilly-dallying and picking up sticks and sniffing the ground and all kinds of stuff, right? And so for me, and a lot of this is going to come down to your own sort of standards of what you want on a dog. There is no exact way that every dog must walk. People have different rules that they implement for their walks. Some of it dictated by what your dog needs, behaviorally, and some of it's just our own personal preferences. So me personally, I use the walking behind method, which I have the course about. And in that method, I don't mind if the dog is sniffing. Of course, the dog's supposed to be behind me. I don't mind if they sniff. I don't mind if they kind of switch sides behind me, as long as they're keeping pace enough that I don't feel like I'm dragging them along. But needless to say, if the dog is really lagging and it's just because they're being distracted, generally, if you're using this technique to begin with, your dog should be on some form of a training collar. And so in that context, I would either A, just keep walking, brace my hands to my chest so that my arms don't kind of give with the dog. And I'm just going to keep going. At the end of the day, I'm just a larger being than the dog is, and they're attached to me with a rope, and they have to figure out that I'm not going to just stop every time they feel like they want to stop. You know, I would give reasonable opportunities to sniff and to explore and to loosen up. Of course, we'll give them opportunities to use the bathroom, but they can't just stop every 2 feet. I'm going to just keep going. And I'll just act like I don't even notice the dog has stopped. Like I'm moving forward. It's not my job to be staring at you behind me as I walk forward. I'm walking. You're attached to me with a rope. For other dogs, you might need to actually give a little bit of a kind of more of a like a snap on that leash, a little pop on that leash to kind of get their attention. And that can be particularly effective if you're using something like a prong collar, which is my training collar of choice for anything leash related. But some people prefer slip leads as well. I find the prong collar to just be a bit more effective and user friendly and actually apply a lot less pressure to the neck, which is really why I like using it. We get away with much lighter pressure on the neck, so we don't get the choking and the gagging and like all those kinds of things. Really, the prong collar is designed to avoid all that. It looks like a little torture device, but it's actually designed to allow us to be more gentle. That's a really important thing to remember. So moral of the story is if the dog's just lagging behind, but you're not dragging them, like for me, there's not an issue with that. I don't have a problem with that. Now, if you have a problem with it, that's fine. You can determine your own rules for the walk. But initially, my first choice would be, can I just encourage this dog to be a little bit up closer to me? But especially if we get a sense that the dog is lagging out of a sense of caution. They got corrected. They don't want to get corrected again. They're not perfectly clear on like how to play the game. Then I really want to make sure I follow up that correction with making the game a little bit easier and letting the dog experience winning. Doing some of those turns nice and slow, doing some of those turns when the dog's like eyes are on me and they see me turning and they can really do the right thing, and making sure I'm giving enough space on that leash so that when I turn and go the other way, the dog has a reasonable amount of time to react and turn and follow before they hit the end of the leash. If your leash is too short, the dog can't win. By the time you change directions and take even one step, the leash has gone tight, and your dog probably just doesn't have that quick of reaction time. And then again, you can just get a dog who starts to feel really nervous and cautious about the experience. When you do this technique right, usually you don't do more than a couple corrections in a row, and the dog should start to get the idea and start to figure out, again, what is in their own best interest here. So that's how I would approach it. A little bit easier to explain some of those concepts in a video versus trying to spell this all out. If you need clarification on any of that, or if you would like to give a little bit more detail about sort of precisely what you're experiencing, feel free to put that in the comments here. I know some other of the people in the Facebook group have already asked for some clarification as to what's going on here, but feel free to provide that. The more of an understanding we have of really what's going on with both you and your dog, we can give more personalized advice, because every situation is a bit unique, and that's sort of what we kind of stand for here at Consider the Dog is, it's not a one size fits all. So those are just some initial suggestions, but if we need to go a little bit deeper, we certainly can. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you need more detail, or if this isn't making sense in any way, and we can try to clarify that as needed.